say lob it to Ryan Perez in the paint off a couple of screens.
Esquivel to Garcia. Off the deflection. Los Fresnos comes back and wins. Now Santa Maria will put up a three. Bang! Santa Maria.
Here's Warner. Here comes a headed jam. Counted for two.
Field. Adios! And the Falcons win on a walk-off.
And it's saved.
What a game. Smack to the left. That is gone.
Lob for Perez. That's my play. Off the backboard. Counting and a win. And a win. Ryan Perez wins the game for the Santa Rosa Warriors. And a pleasant good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to a special edition here of the Luke Fruia Show. We're at Luke Fruia Motors in Brownsville, Texas, and it's playoff edition of high school football. I'm Joe Bowling. I'm a special guest today. Jacob Young is the host. And Jacob, let's just get right into it. Playoff football, round two, and a lot of exciting games for the Rio Grande Valley.
100%. There's so many that I'm looking forward to as well, of course. Me being a little bit of a homebody, my main focus will be McAllen Memorial taking on none other than, well, New Braunfels. That should be exciting, but there's just, like you talked about before, there's so many more that we can be excited about because there are chances of teams from the Valley moving on to the third round. We don't get that often, especially since the newest UIL changes, and we're in the second round. A lot of teams have to play a Smithson Valley. A lot of teams have to play at Alamo Heights or any teams like that. And, well, let's be clear. Most of the times, they're going to struggle. They might as well be eliminated.
Yes, Week 3 was always the challenging week in the years past for the Rio Grande Valley. Realignment has said now Week 2 becomes an ultimate challenge. But the bottom line is all of these football teams are trying to get to a position in where they're considered among the top teams in the state, regardless of where they land in the bracket. And that means from Class 2 to Class 6, we have some representation. And so as we get into our show here a little bit, again, I'm kind of infringing on Jacob's show, but they asked me to come in here and try to help out with some playoff stuff. So I'll interject my part. Jacob Young will give his expertise here from Luke Fruia Motors. Let's dive into Class 2, Division 2. That's where we have one of the teams that maybe quietly is one of the better teams in the Rio Grande Valley that people just aren't talking about. La Villa, setting at 9-1. The Cardinals are taking on Iola, who's at 6-3. Now, the only loss for La Villa was to Lyford. That was back in Week 2. They've run the table since. Lyford, by the way, made the playoffs a couple of classes up. And then a close loss last week. They lost to San Diego 17-13. This La Villa team has been putting up some huge numbers on offense. They put up 67 in a win over MMA, which, by the way, won a state championship at the charter school level last week. They put up 75 against Monte Alto, beat Louisa 49-8 last week. Iola lost to Granger, has since lost 3 straight. Granger is still in the playoffs. Iola lost last year in that round to Junction Big. Sand Crab Stadium is the location. Port Lavaca Friday night. Shiner sitting at 11-0, most likely will be there in round 3 as they take on the bracket this week. But La Villa sitting at 9-1. How good are those Cardinals? You got an eyeball test.
Yeah, exactly. I think that they can be very good, especially, here's the thing. I always say this. You can't get too far into your head. That's the biggest thing playing in a playoff game like that is, yes, they have that experience or they have that mentality of, yes, we can go up there and win. But at the same time, you have to make sure that you're focused, get up early, and anything like that. And I think if they're able to have that momentum early, they should have no problems going over. That's a game that I would be a little bit afraid of in my eyes because, yes, it's still playoff football because we saw it last week. One of the biggest things that I can kind of see is those small losses, and even for McAllen Memorial, how they were struggling to decide to defeat none other than Harlingen South. That can happen to La Villa. You don't want to get too ahead of yourselves, but I think that they should be able to take care of business.
One of the things that the Rio Grande Valley teams that I've been covering the better part of 2 decades is the fact that fans get caught up in looking at just what I ran out there with. A whole bunch of offensive numbers, 67 points here, 50 points here, 75 points here. Traditionally, the Rio Grande Valley teams have struggled when they run against teams that don't let them put up a bunch of points, and they find themselves in a position of having to get stops and then sustain drives, not big plays that result in quick points. And so you don't go into that game saying, well, we'll just outscore them, because that's the trap that Rio Grande Valley teams come in. La Villa, it's hard not to look at their offense, though, Jacob, that they can put up numbers, and MMA found that out in a big way.
Exactly, yes. They are known to put up those numbers, and that's a positive. But again, what I always look for in games like that, even with the offense, is how can they survive against another type of defense? That's going to be the biggest question that will be answered, of course, this weekend, because again, if they get stopped early and are down, I think there's going to be issues. But for La Villa, they should be able to take care of business, but it's very scary in that sort of realm.
So La Villa plays on Friday. Again, the winner of that game takes on Shiner. That's a whole nother world, sitting at 11-0. Most likely they'll be sitting there in round 3. We'll take a break. When we come back, it's the team that Jacob wants to talk about right out of the gate. McCallum Memorial, Class 5, Division 1. We'll get into that and more. This is the Luke Fruia Show in Brownsville, Texas. We'll be right back after this.
Rev up your future with Texas Southmost College's Auto Body Repair Program. In just 2 semesters, you'll gain the skills to become an auto body repair specialist. Learn using industry standard iCar Academy to get you job ready fast. If you're ready to drive your career forward, TSC's Auto Body Repair Program is the place to start. Classes are filling fast, so visit tsc.edu and apply today.
Elevation, AT4, AT4X, Denali. Case closed. Fruia GMC, we're professional grade.
We are back here at Luke Fruia Motors, and wow, we're getting input coming in from the sidelines as Rudy came running down here to get his input on a game later on at the Class 6 level, and so we'll entertain that as well. Let's get to Class 5. Because of realignment, Jacob, a bunch of teams from the Rio Grande Valley are sitting there as now the power schools, and they're all sitting in Class 5. Let's start with the first one. McCallum Memorial, sitting at 9-2, will take on New Braunfels, who's also 9-2. Now, Memorial lost to Wessico, lost to Johnson in back-to-back weeks. Wessico still alive and well. Johnson's 11-0. They're playing Hutto. McCallum Memorial beat Harlingen South last week, 35-21. No team they beat, though, is still alive in the playoffs. Braxton Spates averages better than 171 yards per game. This game's on Friday. The winner takes on the winner of PSJA North and Bernie Champion. We'll get to that in a moment. Let's talk about the Mustangs and what they bring to the table against New Braunfels.
Yeah, exactly. They bring a lot of power running game. Of course, their basic lineup that they do is always the 2-back set in the back with, of course, the quarterback right there. Quarterback normally would be Kane Coy. Unfortunately, he got hurt during the Nicky Rowe game, and he has not been back since. And so it's been very difficult for themselves to kind of find that identity right after. That's the whole reason why, in my eyes, they went to triple overtime with Nicky Rowe. And Nicky Rowe, of course, had that heartbreaking exit of the playoffs beforehand, and so that was a big thing. And then you go back into it, McCallum Memorial, their defense can be it feels like there's some holes in their offense. And even with their defense, too, if they cannot get the running game established, they seem to have a lot of problems on that offensive front. That's why, of course, they were down and almost out against Nicky Rowe, where they had to almost wait a week to win the district. And there's a lot of that on the defensive front. Giving up as many points as they have, it's going to be a struggle for them to be able to beat New Braunfels in my eyes. But, of course, that defensive side, they've been able to make some stops. I didn't think that they were going to be able to defeat Edinburgh Vela when they defeated Edinburgh Vela. Right out of the gate, they don't score a touchdown, but they make a safety. So their defense can come up big if the opposition aren't ready for it. And that could be the case here. But in my eyes, I do see, unfortunately, a loss for McAllen Memorial.
Yeah, they've got to put up some numbers and get some points. Again, the theme, my friends, is can you do something on defense against the opponents if you're the Rio Grande Valley looking to get into the next round, which will be round 3. Last week, they beat Harlingen South 35-21. That South team seemed to be finding their stride heading into the playoffs. So to limit them to 21 points and to put up 35, South also knew that they could turn them into a one-dimensional team, still didn't shut them down. So, New Braunfels is going to look at it too and say, all right, let's shut their run game down, force them to pass the football.
Yep.
How good is Spates and that running game if you can't shut him down?
Oh, he is fantastic, and not only himself, but you also have, of course, their second running back. Like, it's not just a Spates marked team. That's the best part about it. You look at the offensive numbers, and McAllen Memorial, they average around 400 yards a game, and that's more often than not off of the running game, of course, but they can still pass the ball some and almost average just under 100 yards of passing too. So they can be a two-dimensional team on offense, but more likely than not, you will have a lot of running. Now, the biggest thing, Spates, I noticed he switches into the fullback spot. He gets those yards because that's how strong of a player he is. He can get those short yard gains when they need it. And then there's other running backs that can break out for big gains to get those first downs instantly to burst into the end zone for a 20-yard run or something like that. So that's the big thing. If they don't find the running attack from Spates, you have someone else waiting right on the wings for McAllen Memorial to break through. So there's a lot of versatility on that offensive front. The defensive front, though, like I said, is a little scary in my eyes, but they've shown this season that they're a different team than they have been in the past just due to the fact of the wins that they picked up when in the past they've struggled against those same teams.
And their game, again, is on Friday night. Now, the winner of that sets up what is one of the many scenarios in the playoffs this week in which the Rio Grande Valley could play the Rio Grande Valley in round 3, and then you're talking about a guaranteed 4th round spot, but you got to get through this round 2 game, and then the game that they're looking to play the winner of, PSJA North and Bernie Champion. PSJA North comes in at 11-0. Bernie Champion 8-3. It's going to be at Laredo Sac on Friday night, 7 o'clock, same kickoff as the McAllen Memorial game. Bernie lost to that New Braunfels team in October, 27-17. They also lost to Smithson Valley and Alexander. Smithson Valley is 10-1. They play Corpus Christi Veterans this week. Alexander finished 4-6, so it's a question mark. How did they lose that Alexander team? Meanwhile, PSJA North beat Corpus Christi Veterans, a team that beat them 24-13. After Ethan Guerra, though, is now off the table, and his 171 yards per game, that's the big question mark. It was last week. Andrew Alvarado at 60 yards per game. Quarterback Darren Garcia has 18 touchdown passes. PSJA North, Bernie Champion. Can they fill in the bracket and those Raiders move on?
Exactly. That's going to be the biggest question. Now I look back at 2 games in the regular season for PSJA North, and these were 2 games. One that I was specifically at was PSJA North hosting Harlingen South. We go back to that Harlingen South team, how they found a rhythm in that first half, and then all of a sudden it was a pick 6. Right before that, Harlingen South were driving to try and tie it up before halftime. My point is, PSJA North, yes, they've found a lot since that game, but they can be beatable. They can be broken down throughout a game, and all of a sudden, if there's holes in that offense, you better believe that there is going to be a defensive coordinator that will try to take advantage of it. That's the scary part in my eyes, that PSJA North and Matthew Kaufman, they find some problems, or they have some problems with their team, and it can be very bad for that side. I've seen it happen before 2 years ago when none other than Brownsville Vets made that run. I remember the team getting at each other's throats they were teammates and they were frustrated at each other. So that's the thing that can be scary if PSG North don't come out of the gate fast enough.
It's one of those things that they're setting at 11-0, and we got a couple of 11-0 teams on the mix here. But could a loss in the regular season have perhaps helped PSG North get ready for this playoff game? Because now it's backs against the wall, everything on the table. You have to produce. The defense is as fast as they've ever been. According to some coaches, they're faster than they've ever been at all positions. But that offense, again, we talk about defense making the plays in the playoffs, but can PSG North's offense find a rhythm without their primary running back? Because he's a big loss.
Yeah, exactly. That's a thing, too. I remember he ended up getting hurt sort of against Harlingen South where he had to be pulled out of the game. They had that game at a lock, though, at that time, but I believe he had some trouble with his hamstring or anything like that. So, yes, now will be a question mark for that specifically. And does PSG North have another game plan with him into these deeper rounds of the playoffs? That is a question that, of course, will be answered this Friday. But for my take, I really don't see that happening. I really see somebody else I really see Bernie Champion being able to really play this tight game. And if they get up by 2 scores early, I don't see PSG North being able to come back from that deficit just due to the fact of even against Flower Bluff. I feel like with that game that late in the season, well, Flower Bluff, of course, had that victory, but if they had won, I don't know how PSG North would be doing now.
But PSG North has proven they can beat teams that are playoff bound. They've proven they can beat teams that have them down. They've come from behind. They've solved the riddle every time someone challenges that football team. Should be an interesting matchup on Friday. Again, that's Class 5 D1. McCallum Memorial at 9-2 takes on New Braunfels at 9-2. The winner plays either PSG North at 11-0 or Bernie Champion at 8-3. A lot of eyeballs going to be over in Laredo and keeping up with what's going on there. Class 5 Division 1. Now, that's the first scenario in which you could have Rio Grande Valley versus Rio Grande Valley in round 3. Both these teams have to get through, and that's a whole bunch of what-ifs, but at least it's out there. We'll take a break. When we come back, Class 5 D2. Could be the same kind of a story. We'll talk about that and more. That's Jacob Young. I'm Joe Bowling. This is the Luke Fruia Show in Brownsville, Texas. Back with more after this.
Turn your passion into a powerful career at Texas Southmost College. Our automotive technology program will train you in everything from maintenance to full vehicle systems repair. Earn a certificate or associate degree and get certified to work as a C maintenance or B-level technician. You'll be guided by seasoned instructors who have decades of real-world automotive experience, helping you get ready to roll into the industry. So take the wheel and apply today at tsc.edu.
No matter where you are in life, Texas Southmost College is here to help you move forward. Whether you're starting fresh, changing careers, or gaining new skills, TSC has affordable programs designed to fit your goals. It's time to take the next step. Think big. Think bright. Think TSC.
This summer, settle in and reconnect with one another. South Padre Island has so many great places to stay. Condos, resorts, and hotels. Oh my! Book your summer getaway today. And start making memories poolside with the people you care about most. Visit SoPadre.com.
Back here on the Luke Fruia Show on a Wednesday afternoon. We're here every Wednesday, by the way, at 2 o'clock sharp. Most of the times we're here. Last week, Jacob went solo flight from another location, but home of Buick, GMC, and Cadillac in Brownsville, Texas, and a lot of expansion going on here, which we'll be talking about as well for Luke Fruia Motors, but appreciative of them allowing us to set up here for this broadcast. We're talking playoff football, Class 5 Division 2. Well, if there's ever a log jam full of teams from the Rio Grande Valley, it's Class 5 Division 2. Alive and well, Sherryland, Mission Veterans, Mercedes, Pioneer, all there. 3 teams in the same district, Jacob. And before I start breaking down games, let's just talk about in and out playing against playoff type teams in your district. Those 3 teams certainly know what it's like to play playoff teams.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, you talk exactly about that with Mission Vets, Pioneer, and Cherryland High, right? All 3 of them. Let's say, for just out of the sake of course, the RGV, all 3 of them do make it to that next round. Here is the biggest thing. I always like to say this. Lightning, sometimes they don't strike twice. And so Mission Vets, of course, they win that district. They won all their games. That was the biggest thing. And so if they were to play Cherryland High or Cherryland Pioneer in that next round, I would expect a completely different game plan from those other teams as well. So it's very exciting because in the playoffs, it just means more. It just feels a lot different in that sake. And so this is going to be big. Of course, you still have to get past this second round, and it really doesn't feel like an area round in general. And so it's going to be interesting to see how all that really plays out.
It's going to be something else to take a look at when you look at the way the playoff brackets play out in this scenario. And again, the RGV is alive and well. Let's break it down first and say that the Snakeskin Classic is traditionally a huge game in Sherryland. It's Sherryland versus Pioneer. Both of them are in round 2 playoffs. If they win, historically, a Snakeskin Classic in round 3. And that means Mission Veterans and Mercedes, if they win, they will also be matched up in round 3, guaranteeing we have some round 4 teams. And there's a scenario out there that says the Rio Grande Valley could be guaranteed RGV versus RGV in round 4 and assure a round 5 team. And that could all play out here. But let's first start with this breakdown of the Sherryland team. Sherryland at 8-3 against Gregory Portland, 10-1. Gregory Portland only lost to Sinton, which is now 10-1 and alive and well. Sherryland came off a bye week to get into the playoffs and raced through Porter last week. I was there. Rattlers have lost to Mercedes, lost to Mission Veterans, and lost to Los Fresnos. Mercedes was a tight one, 33-32. That was a thriller. Los Fresnos beat them 63-20. Mission Veterans beat them 28-16. In the last 5 weeks, Sherryland is the only team to put up at least 20 points versus Los Fresnos, and we'll get to them in a minute. San Benito also put up 25. Harlingen put up 28 in an overtime loss. The winner of that does play Bernie or Pioneer. Now, I saw Sherryland last week. They were coming off a rare instance in which you get a bye week heading into the playoffs. And wow, Jacob, did they look solid across the board. Your thoughts on Sherryland first against a 10-1 Gregory Portland team?
Yeah, here's the thing. This is the first matchup where I think this can be on an upset watch. And what I mean by that, Gregory Portland would, in my eyes, be the favorite. And I really do believe the way that Sherryland High have been playing, the way that I've, of course, even with my games, I've looked at Sherryland just to see how they've been doing all season, and I see they're stomping their opponents, even in district. And then I look at it and say, how can they do against Porter? It's not like as well as I look at it kind of like college as well, in the sense of, yes, you can play in a bad conference or whatever, but how are you doing against those foes? Well, if you're winning by more than 3 touchdowns sometimes in those games, then you're doing pretty all right. You should be taken seriously. And that's how I feel. I don't believe that Gregory Portland will be taking Cherryland High as serious as possible. If they can get on the board first, oh my goodness, there's a good chance that Cherryland High will be going to that third round if all can play well, because I think they'll come out with that chip on their shoulder for sure, because of how well they've been playing all season long. This is a group that has that confidence, and you look back at, of course, this whole season, that was no fluke of how well they've been doing. So that is really why. Of course, yes, the loss to Mission Vets. Okay, some can discredit that loss in general, but in my eyes, I don't see that happening. I really do believe that Sherryland High can definitely put Gregory Portland on that upset watch.
I looked at that Mission Vets game as the game in which David Gilpin said, "I got something for you," which he seems to come up with all the time. We'll get to his game in just a minute. He beat him 28-16. The biggest one I circle on the regular season schedule for Sherryland was the Mercedes game. They're the only team that played as close after the first week against Mercedes as anybody. That Mercedes team is solid. We'll get to them in a minute. But the 33-32 loss seemed to find another gear for this Sherryland team. We go back to the theme of defense. How can you play defense in the playoffs to move along? Sherryland produced turnovers against Porter. Their secondary was lightning quick. Their front four was applying a lot of pressure against a Porter team that was just simply overwhelmed. But if that defense can get some spark from an offense that scores early, like you said, and then factor in maybe a turnover or two, yeah, upset alert. Sherryland has an opportunity to what, and again, don't kid yourself. Gregory Portland is 10-1. They only lost to Sinton. Sinton is a solid playoff team, considered to be a Final Four team. And so this Gregory Portland team is real. Will they take them lightly? Some teams tend to do that against the Rio Grande Valley, especially when you're looking at, they're 8-3. Well, they're an 8-3 team that is really on track. Everybody's healthy, and they're ready to roll.
Exactly. That's the thing as well. You mentioned it too as well for Sherryland. Their defense, of course, was lightning quick in that game against Porter. The biggest thing is getting to that quarterback. If Sherryland High can get off the line quick enough, getting to the quarterback, having a lot of tackles for losses, that is going to be a serious team to look at in that round during the game, in my opinion. And like I said, yeah, it's definitely going to be that upset watch, that game to really look out for, just in case. Yes, Gregory Portland are always great, but there is a good chance that we could see Sherryland High move on.
Yep, maybe get lost in a shootout. Get up there and ramp up the points in the 40s and just see what happens against a Gregory Portland. Good luck to the Sherryland Rattlers. Now, before that game, which is played on Friday, comes the Thursday game. Bernie at 10-1 takes on Pioneer at 7-4. That's Thursday at 7 o'clock. Bernie's only lost to Piper. They're still alive and well. They take on Flower Bluff this week in the playoffs. Pioneer lost in overtime to Hannah early. Lost to Brownsville Veterans, Sherryland Mission Veterans. All four of those teams made playoffs, and two of them are still alive. Pioneer at 7-4, arguably the biggest underdog in the RGV this week against Bernie. What can the Pioneer Diamondbacks do to make this a game?
Yeah, exactly. They have to. Well, of course, I always look at it this way. The start of the game has to be on the coin toss as well. If they're able to win the coin toss, I would say receive. Start off with the ball this time, because you want to have your away fans kind of with that energy. And if Sherryland Pioneer can score first, that's a big thing. I've seen them as a second half team from the start of the season. Got to cover them against PSG High. Of course, unfortunately, PSG High, we all know how their season ended up going, which was unfortunate from the get-go. But like I mentioned, this is a team that can be very talented in general. And so the biggest thing is they just have to take advantage of the opportunities, make sure that they can force turnovers. Their defense has to be electric. This has to be a perfect game from them. If they are able to create this perfect game in a way, they have a good shot against them. It's going to be very difficult, as we all know, because they're the least likely team from that district to move on. But crazier things have happened.
Yeah, ask Brownsville veterans what it's like to keep winning in the playoffs and moving on. Pioneer, again, that's a Thursday game for Bernie versus Pioneer. Bernie 10-1, Pioneer 7-4 takes on the winner of Sherryland at 8-3 and Gregory Portland at 10-1. We're going to break down Mission Veterans and Mercedes, who they play, how that plays out, and more, and we'll get to Class 6 before this show's over. We're already halfway through it. This is the Luke Fruia Show. We're in Luke Fruia Motors, home of Buick, GMC, and Cadillac in Brownsville, Texas. Back with more Class 5 schools after this.
It means a lot to me. TSC has changed me to make me realize that I can accomplish things. Just don't give up. I've come a long way from where I was to what I am now, and there's no limit to where I'm going.
Permatemp Personnel Services has been servicing local businesses for the past 29 years.
Leave the hiring to us. Let us become your personal hiring guru.
We have a network of skilled employees to fit your needs.
Your success is our strategy.
Don't hesitate, call us now.
Back here at the Luke Fruia Motors Show, I'm Joe Bowling. Jacob Young to my right-hand side. I kind of infringed on his show, my friends. It's normally this is his route. I appreciate you letting me tune in here and chime in here on this. Let's get right into it. Mission Veterans against Victoria West. Mission Vets sets at 10-1. Victoria West sets at 9-2. On the other side of the bracket, Mercedes 11-0. Alamo Heights 10-1. First, those Patriots, 10-1 versus Victoria West. The winners of these two games are going to play each other. Mission Veterans. I saw them against Laredo LBJ. They took it on the chin. Lost 28-27. Responded a week later by knocking off Harlingen 38-37. And David Gilpin's team has never looked back since that victory. As a matter of fact, their defense said we can go to another level. Beat Hannah 42-19. Beat Sherryland 28-16. Shut out Alice 47-0. Roma 40-14. Pioneer 27-6. Pace 41-14. 2 touchdowns or less against the opponents since that loss by Laredo LBJ and then the Harlingen victory. This Mission Vets team arguably is as hot as anybody in the Rio Grande Valley, and their defense is leading the way.
100%. That's the biggest thing. When your defense is able to lead the way, then people start to react. Of course, right now, as we all know, in that round, I don't expect a lot of the players on that opposition team to really take Mission Vets as serious as we look at it, just due to the fact of their previous records when it comes down to the playoffs. Unfortunately, crashing and burning in that second round, getting eliminated because they played teams not only like that, but they played teams like Liberty Hill in the second round, which is just unfortunate in that regards. But that's the thing. Offense has to come out swinging. The defense has to make sure that they are on guard. And I would expect if Mission Vets can only allow about 20 points or so in that game, they can be up for a chance at a victory.
Yep.
But if things get anywhere out of sorts like that, I don't expect things to go their way.
You don't think they can win a shootout? They have to do it on the defensive end.
I have not seen them play with a shootout throughout this season. That's the only problem, is their games normally are tight, And if their games are tight, then they're the ones that are able to take advantage.
Yep.
That's just the way that it has been this season.
Yep, that Harlingen game, I circle that as a big victory for that team. 38-37 was the one in which they said we got to score more points, even though our defense is giving up some points. Their opponent is Victoria West, and you talk about a team that's playing in a district that's tough. Victoria West didn't lose a game unless it was in district play. Let's run down there what they've done at 9-2. Beat Lockhart out of the gate 54-6. Victoria East in one of those rivalry matchups, 32-29. Shut out Sam Houston 39-0. Beat Jones 47-3. Here comes the theme of defense. McCollum, they beat them 41-7. Then they took on Tivy, and they said, too, we need to score points? Okay, we'll go on the road at Tivy and beat them 59-56. Followed that up with a game against Alamo Heights, playoff bound, still playing. Lost that one 54-42. Lost to Bernie 24-14. We've already talked about Bernie. Beat Harlandale, beat Veterans Memorial 13-7, beat Corpus Christi Mellor last week like a drum 61-23. So again, 7 points, 17 points, 14 points, 7-3-0. Defense gives up points, 6 points. But yet they give up 56 to Tivy. This team knows they can bring some offense. They also know they can bring some defense. They're a tough opponent.
Exactly. And I look at, of course, the defense of, again, Mission Vets. That's where I think that Mission Vets can really shine against Victoria West, because that's where they've just been able to show up, in my eyes. In general, of course, the offense has as well. That's why they're in this playoff, in this situation in general. So that's going to be a big thing of just the defense has to show up and the offense will fall.
That Tivy team, by the way, which got in that ultimate shootout, showed even last week in a loss in the playoffs that they were a team that could bring the offense night in, night out. They lost to Gregory Portland, and get this, 75-50 was the final score in that one. So they are a team that can put up some big-time points when needed. Now we go from Mission Veterans to Victoria West and look at Mercedes against Alamo Heights. Mercedes 11-0. Alamo Heights 10-1. I've talked about a little bit about the Mercedes team, and they've won some close games. You saw them early on. They found another gear, too.
Exactly. That's been the biggest thing. I've, of course, followed along with their games and seen their scores and all of that fun stuff, because from the start of the season, I thought to myself, there's no way that either Edinburgh High or even Mercedes were going to be in the situations that they were in throughout the regular season, because up until, I think, 2 weeks ago in the season, at least for Edinburgh High, they had a chance at the district title or somewhere around that. The same goes, of course, for Mercedes. They ended up winning their district. But that was a big thing in general to just see and kind of balance out, and just teams will be able to find, if they're really good, those teams will be able to find that second gear. They will be able to find a way to dominate teams in the later stages of the season when players are hurt, when teams are struggling to find those wins to clinch playoffs or things like that. So there's a lot of fight in Mercedes. That's the biggest thing. And if they're able to play that style of football into this round, there's a good chance that they could potentially pull off a good victory, but it's going to be very difficult.
You look at the run that they had in district play first and foremost for Mercedes. Starting with Ed Couch, beat them 42-8. Lopez, 63-17. PSJA Southwest, 48-7. Porter, 69-0. Pace, 56-6. Going into the playoffs, everyone said, wow, that defense is good. Can their offense put up some points? Because Roma's going to score some points, and they took on Roma last week. Roma put up 29 points. Mercedes said, here's 65, and they found a way to put points on the board. Again, they're two-dimensional. They're a football team that you can't rely on just one thing. You better be ready to stop the run. You better be able to stop the pass, and you better have it geared up to put some points on against the offense for Mercedes. They're as tough as we have in the Rio Grande Valley.
100%. That's been the best thing about this team, has been, of course, their offense. Not to mention, like you said, they are a two-dimensional team, and that is a perfect example of why this is another game that I can definitely say there's a good chance for another Valley school to advance at least to the third round. And the biggest thing of how they'll do it is by scoring points. A couple of stops on defense, I think, can really set Alamo Heights back too and give that advantage to the Mercedes Tigers. So there's a lot of positive here, and I really like the chance of it technically being on upset watch because, as we all know, Valley schools aren't supposed to make it past these San Antonio schools, is what everyone would say.
Alamo Heights, though, don't kid yourself. Let's take a look at what they bring to the table. They started the season with a victory over Seguin, put up 70 in that game, 70-35 the victory. Seguin, I talked about them earlier. Beat Churchill 54-24, beat Canyon 42-28, beat Clemens 33-30. Their only loss to Bernie. I talked about Bernie. Bernie, 2-point ball game, 37-35. That was their only loss. Harlandale beat them 42-20. Victoria West 54-42. And then they got stingy. Veterans Memorial, they beat them 62-7. McCollum, they beat them 69-7. Tivy, they beat them 77-35, holding Tivy to 35. We talked about that. That's a pretty impressive feat.
Mm-hmm.
Carroll shut them out 60-0 heading into this playoff round. This team is a heavy foe for the Mercedes Tigers.
Exactly. I mean, we go back to it. Both teams, they can average a lot of points per game. That's the biggest thing, and one of the really places to look at are those playoff games. How did those two teams do in their first round? And the biggest thing is, if you're putting up 60 points in that playoff round, then, yeah, we're looking at a shootout, most likely, for both of these two sides. Because, yes, there's a lot of defense, but I would say that we're going to see more touchdowns than we are going to see stops or potential sacks. Because especially if you can have a mobile quarterback, oh boy, are we looking for something exciting.
Jacob looks for a bunch of points in Mercedes versus Alamo Heights. We'll talk next week about that one. Well, that's the breakdown. Again, there's 4 teams in that bracket from the RGV. Sherryland, Mission Vets, Mercedes, Pioneer. If they all win, then they'll all be playing each other next week. And, whoa, that'll be a show to talk about if we have teams playing in round 3 against each other that are from the RGV. Let's take a break. When we come back, let's ramp it up to Class 6. We've got an undefeated team still alive in the RGV and another one that's really, really good. They're taking on some tough opponents. We'll break down Class 6 after this. This is the Luke Fruia Show from Brownsville, Texas. Buick GMC Cadillac. Back with more after this.
The standard of excellence has always been Cadillac, so be iconic and drive one. Fruia Cadillac, Brownsville, Texas.
This summer, it's time to go outside and get some air. Explore a pirate ship. Or go horseback riding on the beach. And you can't forget about all the fun on the bay. South Padre Island has so much to do for the whole family. Book your summer getaway today. Visit SoPadre.com.
Rev up your future with Texas Southmost College's Auto Body Repair Program. In just 2 semesters, you'll gain the skills to become an auto body repair specialist. Learn using industry standard iCar Academy to get you job ready fast. If you're ready to drive your career forward, TSC's auto body repair program is the place to start. Classes are filling fast, so visit tsc.edu and apply today.
Hello sports fans, I'm Jason Starkey with Gallery Homes.
Here at Gallery, we make building your new home simple and stress-free. From sales to selections, we handle every step so you can enjoy the journey to your new home. This is Gallery, where your dreams become reality.
Time to take a new look, maybe your first look at Buick. If smart, hip, and affordable is for you, Buick's your brand. Fruia Buick, Brownsville, Texas.
Back here at the Look For You show on a Wednesday, we're talking about playoff football as we get set for round 2 of the 2025 edition of high school football here in the state of Texas, and talking about teams in the area from the RGV that are still alive and well. Class 6 Division 2, Harlingen Cardinals, still alive, taking on Medina Valley. Jacob Young, I'm going to start first with Harlingen. Everybody in the world wrote Harlingen off more than once throughout the season, and yet Manny Gomez and the Cardinals are saying, we're still here.
Exactly. That's been the most shocking thing, really the most shocking story of this season for RGV is just because, well, they haven't put up that much offense throughout the regular season. That's really where we kind of faltered, even myself, and said, okay, well, why aren't they putting this much offense on? Okay, they lost to Harlingen South. That was a red flag in a lot of people's eyes. That's the kind of the reason why. And so now, of course, going through this season, all of a sudden knocking off teams slowly, almost beating Los Fresnos in that heartbreaker. You were at that game too. And so there's been a lot of, I guess they found their stride right at the end of the season. That's been the biggest thing. Now they're, of course, out of the first round. They're in the second round. But Medina Valley, that's going to be a very difficult game in my eyes for Harlingen to pop up. But again, do they have something else up their sleeves that we're not going to see until that game? Probably. So maybe keep this one at maybe 25% of Harlingen High School may be able to upset Medina Valley in the end, because who knows, the way that this season is going, they look kind of like the way that, of course, Kansas City the last year snuck through every single game in, of course, the NFL. So it kind of has that feel of like, okay, this team, they have this fight that we just keep writing off every single time they play.
Well, we just got the notice as well that, and this is exclusive right here, right now, going to break this to you. We have been approved to broadcast some playoff games for this week, and they include this Harlingen game against Medina Valley. We got the approval for the McAllen game, and that's a biggie.
Yes, it is.
Let's talk about this Cardinal team in Medina Valley, and we got an approval for Edinburgh. What's Edinburgh?
Yeah, Edinburgh High. I forget who they were playing. Well, of course they beat Brownsville Vets. That was a big thing. But Edinburgh High, of course, after last week, after their defeat, which was
They play San Marcos.
San Marcos, okay.
So we'll get the Edinburgh-San Marcos game as an approved broadcast. So the Edinburgh game, McAllen and Harlingen. Let's talk about this Harlingen team. Let me first talk about their opponent, Medina Valley, sitting at 9-2 on the season. Cardinals are 5-6, by the way, and no way to frame that without saying they have the worst record of any team in the RGV still in the playoffs. What's Medina Valley done? They beat Glenn early on, 44-32. They lost back-to-back games. Here's the same theme. Bernie Champion beat them 48-21. Bernie beat them 44-20. Go back to those 5A teams, my friends. I told you, Bernie Champion, no easy round for the RGV. Beat Burbank 70-21. Knocked off Eagle Pass 47-38. Laredo LBJ beat them 28-7. Alexander they beat 30-20. They beat United 38-35. Now, United we're going to talk about in just a moment, but that's a big victory right there to beat them. They beat United South 35-14, beat Del Rio 45-7, and won in the first round of the playoffs against Canyon 56-0. Jacob, there's no way to frame this without saying Harlingen is a huge underdog in this ball game. We're going to broadcast it.
Yeah, exactly. It's whether or not, of course, we're going to get ourselves an exciting football game. The biggest thing, of course, being, well, we get to watch Medina Valley play. We don't necessarily get to watch them play throughout the regular season in general or get to call their games, too. And then, of course, if Harlingen High, like I said, like I mentioned, they have this type of fight that we keep writing off, that could be a big storyline heading into it, too, is that, look, there's going to be most likely Medina Valley, especially their fans, are going to say there's no way in shape or form that they will not be going through to that next round. That's kind of how it feels. It's kind of that write-off game, which is a big advantage, now that I kind of say it, for Harlingen High to sneak through into that next round.
All right, they're going to be playing at Buccaneer Stadium. Let's roll into the next game, and that's a pair of 7-4s. Saturday afternoon, 1 o'clock, San Marcos taking on the Edinburgh Bobcats. You saw them week 1, that Edinburgh Bobcat team and that Mercedes game.
Yes.
Did you think at that time this was the year of the Bobcats as far as teams coming out of Edinburgh?
Oh, not at all. Really.
Neither did anyone else.
It was
except for the Bobcats.
Exactly. So all of a sudden they just they popped up. They found their rhythm. Of course, it was even leaving that game with myself, Cody, and even Randy Naro, we kind of thought to ourselves, it's like, okay, it's week 1. It doesn't mean too much, of course, because, again, Mercedes, they didn't look that good either. That's the craziest part about this, is that both teams that are now in that second round that seem to be doing so well, they didn't look that good at week 1. And so they practiced more. They fixed a lot of mistakes. And, I mean, it really does start in that off week. It really does start in that week 1. That's why non-district play is so important, that you play those types of teams, that you find out the mistakes, and you fix those moving forward. And sure enough, now, Edinburgh High, the way that they defeated Brownsville Vets was in that second half, and the way that, of course, Brownsville Vets just stayed stagnant. And a lot of people, including myself, will say Brownsville Vets beat themselves in that game. It's kind of true. But for Edinburgh High, they focused on what they needed to do better on in that second half. They tweaked their strategy. That's what I like. For teams that are able to do that, the sky's the limit in a way. And so, sure enough, it's going to be very difficult for them to win this game, but who knows? Who knows in the end?
Yeah, you look at the Edinburgh team, the confidence builder after the loss to Mercedes in week 1 perhaps happened in the second game of the year. They knocked off Edinburgh Vella, 19-6. I know it's a low-scoring game. I know you're saying, well, how do you get confidence there? It's a big deal when an Edinburgh school knocks off Edinburgh Vella over the past since Vella came along.
Exactly.
And so when they won that game, it kind of propelled them. They shut out Hannah 15-0, then romped Ed Couch Elsa 35-10, played Los Fresnos. 21-15 was the final, a 6-point ball game against Los Fresnos. That's when everyone started to believe, hey, this is a good football team. PSJA, they beat them 17-14. Again, did you think they could score more points? Probably, but didn't, but found a way to win. Beat La Jolla 33-9. Lost to Economides 27-14 in the Battle of Edinburgh's for this year. Lost to Westaco. Again, lost, but 23-5, which means they forced a safety against Westaco, and they also limited those Panthers to just 23 points. Beat up on Edinburgh North 42-34, and then beat Veterans Memorial out of Brownsville 24-13 last week.
Yep.
So, again, this Edinburgh team is coming on. Do they have enough to beat San Marcos? San Marcos on paper looks like a team that could be beat. You take a look at what they've done on the regular season. They lost their 2 district games. They lost to Weiss 25-15. Lost to Lake Travis 41-6. Most are going to lose to Lake Travis. By the way, the winner plays a Lake Travis winner. Lost to East Central 28-24. Lost to Cibolo Steel 27-21. That's the one I circled that said, hey, they played Steel to 6 points. Pretty good ball game. And then they beat Eagle Pass 42-10. Jacob, it's 7-4, 7-4. Edinburgh High has a chance to be in round 3.
Oh, 100%. That's the, again, you just, it's kind of makes me speechless just due to the fact of how they've played this regular season. Like you mentioned, 5 points against Westaco, but of course that 5 points given a safety and then a field goal is just how well their defense was. And it showed up, of course, last week. That's the thing that I was most impressed with, is how Edinburgh High in that second half forced stops on the running game. That's a big thing. And so if their opposition are a big running team, there is a lot of hope, not only hope, but there's a lot of chance, there's a bigger chance, I should say, that Edinburgh High will make it to the second round. That's going to be good. I don't even see this as an upset. I see it as a coin flip of a game. That's how exciting this one will be. On paper, of course, because once that first snap happens, once that kickoff happens, you can throw all those stats out the window. That's always what I like to say because, well, now the game is being played and who knows how that's going to go. But so far for this year, the way that I've looked at, of course, even the stats as in the points per game on average, they normally are very similar to how that game ends up finishing. So that's one thing, of course, to look at, and I do see it being probably a 5-point or a 4-point game in the end.
Don't turn the ball over. Don't give up the big plays. And Edinburgh High has a chance. We'll be broadcasting that. We'll give all kinds of information on social media on how you can tune into the games that we've been approved to broadcast. Don't get me started. I could spend 3 Luke Fruia shows in a row and talking about what happens in approvals for UIL and playoff football. And don't get me started. I almost got rolling. I won't. Let's get to the other ones. Class 6 D1, we're in overtime, by the way. We normally sign off right now. We're going to get into overtime, talk about Los Fresnos taking on Laredo United, and Westaco at 9-2 taking on Cibolo Steel, 10-1. Cibolo Steel at 10-1 is listed as a favorite against Westaco. Westaco lost to Laredo United 40-30, lost to Laredo LBJ 22-20. This Westaco team at times were talked about as the best team in the Rio Grande Valley.
Yep.
They're going against, at times, being talked about as the best team out of the San Antonio area. Cibolo Steel 10-1. That's going to be a war. Oh,
it really is going to be one because, I mean, I always think of Cibolo Steel back, of course, when even I was in high school. McAllen Memorial, they were 6A. That was a big thing. Even in football, they couldn't necessarily get past the second round, but that's not what I'm really talking about. They're so good in almost every single sport. You would see them, of course, in Brownsville for that soccer, that regional tournament and all that fun stuff. They would advance, of course, to that next round. And just going for that in general is just to show you how much of a history this team has. They're state champs in just about every single sport that they play. And then when it comes down to football, they're one of those teams that are expected to go at least to round 4, if not better, in certain years. And so this is, of course, a game that a lot of people, including myself, will have written off for Westaco High to most likely lose. But again, Westaco High, they, time and time again, always look like that best team in the Rio Grande Valley because of wins like against McAllen Memorial, where, of course, the player highlighted there, Braxton Spates, who wins over just big schools in general and non-district play too. So maybe they're going to be a hot and cold team, and maybe this week they will show up big time and give Cibolo Steel a run for their money.
If Cibolo does what they've done on the regular season against opponents, it means that you're not going to score many points. And so you have to figure out, can you get in one of those 14-13 kind of games, 21-14 kind of games? Cibolo beat Liberty Hill 45-10, beat Reagan 28-13, Brandeis 42-22. Beat Clemens 48-20. Shut out East Central 49-0. Beat Judson 48-14. San Marcos 27-21. Canyon 49-7. Johnson 42-7. Laredo LBJ last week in the playoffs beat them 69-14. The only loss for Cibolo Steel this year, Westlake. Beat them 37-14. They found a way to score points, but that's Westlake. And Jacob Young, does Westaco have enough to bring a Westlake type of environment against Cibolo Steel? It's going to be a tough chore.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be a tough chore. I don't see it, of course, but I mean, who knows? That's why we love the game, is because it will be played and we'll figure out if they can. I don't see it happening, but again, I go back to it. Crazier things have happened in playoffs for Valley schools, and I mean, just who knows? I don't expect it to happen, but you've seen it before.
Well, that gets us to our final one. We're in overtime here at the Luke Fruia Motor Show, and let's talk about Los Fresnos taking on Laredo United. RGV teams have certainly had their chance to take a look at Laredo United. They didn't much like them this year. San Benito saw them, got beat 31-10. Westaco, we just talked about them. They played them, lost 40-30. So teams in the Rio Grande Valley have played Laredo United. Other teams are saying, and even Laredo teams are saying, this may be the best Laredo team they've ever put together. They're sitting at 9-2. A couple of teams that beat them include Medina Valley. We talked about them. And they lost another game. Here they are, same theme. Bernie. Bernie beat everybody in this whole show. Bernie and Bernie Champion have been the ones that nobody says they beat Bernie. They beat other people. But United taking on Los Fresnos. Jacob Young, David and his Los Fresnos Falcons are as good as I've ever seen. They can do it on the offense. They can do it on the defense. Do they have enough, though? Because Laredo United is going to be able to put up some points, and defensively they're going to be fast.
Do they have enough? I don't think so. The only reason is just because of how they ended their season. The way that Los Fresnos ended their season were close victories against teams that they should have easily taken care of against others. That includes, of course, we go back to it, the overtime victory against San Benito, the games that they had to close out at the end against teams that had weeks prior lost by double digits to other teams that were a lot weaker than Los Fresnos. That's the only issue that I have with it. Now, of course, it goes back to the way that they have to play in that first half. They cannot play like they have, where they are struggling to have to answer against teams like Laredo, to be exact. Laredo United can easily burn teams that do that. That's the whole reason why they're that good. And so it just comes down to Los Fresnos. They have to play a perfect game of football in order to make sure that they can get the job done. If not, they will have themselves a very tough time against an insanely good Laredo squad. Yeah.
Perfection is perfection, though. Los Fresnos Falcons, David Cantu and his Falcons are unbeaten, including victories over Nicky Rowe, over Edinburgh, over Sherryland, beat Harlingen, beat Economides in the playoffs, and beat them like a drum, 35-10. Everyone said, oh, Economides is going to show Los Fresnos what they got. Los Fresnos said, nope, here we come with another level.
Yep.
It's going to be a fun set of playoffs. Again, our playoff coverage will include being able to cover the Harlingen Cardinals, the Edinburgh Bobcats, and McAllen Memorial. I know which game you'd like to go to.
Yeah.
We'll see where we land up. I'll be going to some games. We'll see what our other crews do as far as getting to our playoff games. But we've got the approval on the RSL network to have 3 playoff games for round 2. And Jacob, I'm excited. All 3 of them are going to be featuring good, if not great teams.
Exactly. And not only that, with the teams, the players too, because this gives a lot of the players, even from the RGV, a chance to be shown on a bigger stage. And especially now with a team in Edinburgh, there's a chance that those players, if they do show up very well, not only could be trying to get fought for down here, but also now Southland can kind of take a look and see, okay, maybe we should start to recruit down here. There could be a big thing. That's always the plus, too. You talk about doing it for the players. That's where it can happen. And giving those exposures, that's where things start to get even more interesting than just wins and losses.
You got a Division I school right in our backyard that's saying, hey, show me you can play. We're already showing you we can compete in a first-year program. I'm talking about UTRGV. I could get into 3 different shows on the Luke Fruia show about them as well. That's going to do it. We've been in overtime. Thanks for sticking around. Keep watching for our social media posts. Watch when we're going to be broadcasting, who's going to be broadcasting, where we're going to be broadcasting. We know it's Edinburgh. We know it's McCallum Memorial. We know it's Harlingen. All 3 of those have been approved, and we'll be seeking sponsors. If you have a business, if you know a business that wants to be a part of broadcasting playoff football, all of those games we talked about are normally talked about in a round 3 or even 4 scenario for the RGV. Realignment says you get them in round 2, and we're going to be broadcasting 3 of them. So if you have a business, if you know a business, have them reach out to us. We need the sponsorship because UIL fees are not free for us to cover, nor is the travel, nor is the expense of covering the games. It's not free. We need the assistance. Reach out to me if you will. I'm Joe Bowling. Jacob, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to all this. This is going to be a crazy weekend of football and potentially some high school basketball mixed in too. So looking forward to all of that, and it's going to be fun. My Aggies are also 10-0 for the first time in my whole lifetime too. So this is just exciting times. I'm looking forward to it. I couldn't be even any more ecstatic about it.
DeMarcus was watching that game. He said, hey, A&M's losing 30-3. I was like, they're going to win. He's like, what? I'm like, they're going to win. He goes, it's halftime. I'm like, look at the turnovers. There will be no turnovers in the second half, and I doubt they let them score, and A&M did win. After they beat Missouri, I'm a believer in A&M this year, okay?
Imagine being there, too.
Wow. Imagine that. Were you there?
Yes, sir.
Amen to that, to get to see your team. All right, fans, I hope you enjoyed this broadcast. Go back and watch this to take a look at what maybe your team is about, and we'll talk next week and see if we were right or wrong about what we thought was going to happen in this week's game. Either way, we'll put it out there for you. I'm Joe Bowling. That's Jacob Young. Hope you enjoyed it from Luke Fruia Motors, home of Buick, GMC, and Cadillac in Brownsville, Texas. Till next time, so long.
I've got my plan. I say lob it to Ryan Perez.